Hey, hope you're doing well. Andy here from Drive Steady, and in this video I'm reviewing the Mercedes AMG GLA45. So listen up, the GLA is the smallest and most economical entry into Mercedes' SUV lineup. So what has Mercedes done to it? Well, let me tell you, they've put one of the most powerful production four-cylinder engines in the world and slapped on an AMG 45 badge. But is that enough to take this thing seriously? We're gonna find out in this review of the Mercedes AMG GLA45. Alright, so let's start the review off with a big thank you to Keys Mercedes for allowing me to review this GLA45 today. If you happen to be interested in this car or any other Mercedes new or pre-owned vehicles, please make sure you give them a call. I've left their information in the description below. Now let's talk about the exterior design really quickly for this GLA45. Then there's some things I like about it, like for example in the rear, the quad tailpipe exhaust and the overall shape of the taillights. This one specifically has the AMG Aerodynamics add-on package, which gives it this black colored wing, gives it that aggressive look in the back. But then when you come to the front, I feel like things start to taper off a little bit. I believe Mercedes could have dialed in a little bit more aggressiveness in the front, especially considering that this is an AMG 45 pack. And another thing that I kind of don't like is the side cladding. The ones beneath the doors here, they're in black plastic looking material. I just wish they were body colored or they were gloss black to match the rest of the gloss black trimming on the GLA45. All right, so now let's talk about what makes this the AMG 45. And as I mentioned, this is one of the most powerful mass-produced four cylinders in the world. So the engine specs, it's a 2-liter turbocharged four-cylinder making 382 horsepower and 354 pounds-feet of torque. It has a 7,300 RPM redline. It's made it to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and it's putting power down to all 4 wheels. Now, an interesting characteristic about this engine is the way it's mounted. It's at a 180-degree angle, and the turbo sits behind the engine. Now, this isn't very common, and Mercedes does this for more efficiency from that turbo and just the engine overall. And this car weighs 3,850 pounds, and all of these specs translate to a 0 to 60 time of 4.2 or 4.3 seconds, which is basically on par with a Lexus LC500 that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago, and that has almost 500 horsepower. So given the weight, the all-wheel drive, and the power that this thing has, this is actually a very impressive performance car, at least in a straight line, given its numbers. Now, one other thing that's impressive, this car has an AMG Sport performance exhaust. So let's go around back and take a listen to what it sounds like. So what did you think of the exhaust in the GLA45? Make sure you leave me a comment down below. Just really quickly about the looks before I start talking about the trunk. This is again part of the AMG Performance Pack. The wing here painted in black sitting here on top of the trunk makes the rear end look a lot more aggressive. You've got the quad blacked out tailpipes and the all LED tail lamps. Now let's move on to some practicality, given that this is a compact SUV and people are going to take things with them or use this on a daily basis. So there are multiple ways of opening the trunk. There's a button on the key, there's a button on the interior, and then there's also comfort access. So you push this. It is a electronic opening trunk, which is always good. And you're greeted with a pretty large amount of space, so you can easily fit 2 larger pieces of luggage in here. Stack them on top of each other. Multiple people traveling together would not have any issues here. So this has 19 cubic feet of cargo space when the seats are folded up. Whoop, almost fell into the trunk there. But 19 cubic feet of space when the rear seats are folded up, and you have the ability to fold them down, which gives you 50 cubic feet of space. Now that's a substantial amount of space when you fold the seats down. So that gives you a larger range of accessibility to use this on a daily basis, to move things around, to carry a lot of stuff with you. So pretty good for a car that has almost 400 horsepower and a 0 to 60 time of close to 4 seconds. So now let me go around to the side, show you the wheels, tires, brakes, and suspension on the GLA45. All right, so let's start off with the suspension, and this does have AMG adaptive dampers that allows you to basically tailor in your suspension feel based off of your driving conditions. Now, it also has a limited slip differential in the rear to give you that much more traction along with the all-wheel drive system. So now moving on to the wheels. These are the most expensive wheels you can get on a GLA45, and they're 21-inch wheels. They're the same wheel on all 4 corners. Somebody's revving up a 53 model back there. But anyway, these are 21-inch wheels. They're 8.5 on all 4 corners. They've got the same tires on all 4 corners, 255s. So it's a true square setup on this GLA45. Now we jump inside the wheel barrel, and you've got bigger brakes here because this does have the AMG Dynamics Plus package. So you get 14.2-inch brakes up front and 13-inch brakes in the rear, 6 pistons up front. And the way you can distinguish between the Dynamics Plus package and the car that does not have that is with the red AMG calipers. These are absolutely humongous calipers. They're painted in red with the black AMG insignia. Really cool looking. This is a really specced out GLA45. It's got the bigger wheels, the Dynamics handling package, and some other things on the interior that are mainly geared towards performance. So speaking of the interior, now let me take you in there and show you what it's like. All right, so now the interior of the GLA45, and this is quite an interesting spec car because it's really loaded up on the exterior with those visual enhancements and the wheels and such. And on the interior, it's got some extra stuff in here too. So let me start off with some of the details. This seat is a $2,700 seat. This is the AMG bucket seat that you see in some of the other performance AMG cars like the AMG GT and whatnot. But the characteristics of this seat are, it's not very comfortable, to be honest with you. The cushioning is rather hard. It's a stiff seat. It does have a good level of adjustments. You can adjust the bolsters, the lumbar. It does have heated seats and all the other normal adjustments that you would get in a seat like this. But one thing that's a little annoying about it is I have to go into the infotainment system to adjust the bolstering and the lumbar and some of those other things. The regular forward backwards and the backrest forward backwards, that is using a controller on the door. But there is an additional layer in order to adjust the other characteristics of this seat. So that was a little bit annoying for me. I prefer a physical button right here on the side. I'm not sure why they couldn't have just done that. They do that in the other AMG cars. The steering wheel is also a part of the AMG Dynamics Plus package. It's got the red trimming, the red stitching, the Alcantara. So whoever spec'd this thing out really went all out with the performance items, the big wheels, the big brakes, the bucket seats, the steering wheel, no sunroof. So this is, they said, okay, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to drive it real fast. I'm going to get the most track-oriented GLA45 that I can. Now, beyond that, some of the other ergonomics and quality items. Now, as far as the quality, the dash and then the carbon fiber piece here is cool, but there is remnants of cheaper quality in here. The plastic pieces down here by my knee and some are the door panels. This area where I rest my arm for the trackpad on the infotainment system, they could have put a leather piece on here, but it's like this cheap looking thing, and I'm not sure. You can definitely tell that this is one of the lower AMG models within the range. Now beyond that, the screens are actually fantastic. Two 10.25-inch screens, one for your gauge cluster, one for infotainment system. The gauges are the same gauges that you see in many other Mercedes cars. They're fantastic. They're clear, easy to read, infinite customization. You can bring up a lot of information just in the gauge cluster here. And then you come over into the infotainment system, which is the latest MBUX. I like the MBUX a lot. I think MBUX and the Mercedes and the BMW iDrive systems are probably the best infotainment systems on the market today. And then beyond that, the rest of the interior is fairly decluttered. The transmission selector is up here on the wheel. So you've got a wireless charging port, 2 cup holders, 3 USB Type-C charging outlets, and a 12-volt. And overall, the storage space in the front, map pockets, the center console here is enough for a sunglass holder or minor knickknacks. And then the driver's side door pocket is pretty substantial as well. So now let me take you to the back seats and show you what it's like over there. All right, so now the back seat of the GLA45, and I'm quite surprised at how much legroom there is back here. I'm sitting comfortably behind myself at 5'10", 5'11", and I've got plenty of legroom here. Headroom is also not an issue. If you are maybe 6 feet or 6'1", you're probably going to have a hard time sitting back here, but I am sitting very comfortably. My armrest here in a nice position. As far as how many people can you sit back here, 2 people obviously just fine, more than enough room. A third person, a third adult sitting in the center here, might have to squeeze in just for a little bit of time. I wouldn't recommend it on long road trips. You're probably going to have some issues with shoulder room. Now beyond that, as far as the amenities go, this does have an optional seat adjustment back here, so you can forward the seat or move it back as you wish. So this is an additional option. Beyond that, you have 2 USB Type-C charging outlets and a traditional 115-volt plug-in style charging outlet as well. Little storage compartment. Unfortunately, no 3-zone climate control back here, but you do have your own vents to point in whatever direction you like. Otherwise, it's a pretty bare bones seat back here. It is pretty spacious. You do have charging outlets, which is always a bonus and absolutely necessary. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. Now let's go to the driving portion of the review and see what this thing feels like behind the wheel. All right, so now the driving portion of the review, and as always, the key. It's got a really nice looking key. I like the AMG keys a lot. It's got that insignia right there, and it's all black. It's got a really nice feel to it, so I actually like the AMG key. Now, as far as visibility goes, you do sit up relatively high. You do get the SUV feel, but not as substantial as like a GLS or anything like that. But visibility over my shoulders is good. Out the back is good. No issues. Mercedes is giving me a bunch of safety features like blind spot monitoring and the rear view camera, front view camera, and the sensors and all that stuff. So I'm not concerned about safety. Most German manufacturers are giving you a whole bunch of safety stuff as standard. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and turn this thing on. It's a rather hot day, so I've got the air conditioning going. It's weird because it's hot and it's windy, and that's why I was filming inside because there was way too much wind. It's gonna get caught in my microphone. But anyway, let's go ahead, seatbelt on. And let's see what this GLA45 is about. Now, I had driven the CLA45, so I'm really interested to see how this compares. This is basically the SUV brother or sister, whatever you want to call it, of that car. So immediately when I set off in comfort mode, this is pretty docile and it's very tame. You do feel like you're driving in an SUV, but not like a full-fledged one. So it's a rather interesting feel, but I'll tell you that here in a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put it in Sport Plus mode because this thing is an absolute riot. Oh my gosh. Woo! This is one of the most surprising driving experiences I have had in quite some time. I don't remember the CLA feeling this way, but the coolness of this car is literally off the charts. It literally feels like you're driving one of those rally cars. And the term pocket rocket immediately comes to mind, and it's so true in this thing, because the sound of the turbo spooling up and the exhaust note and the bark that you get on the ups and the downshifts is a really, really fun driving experience. I can't imagine anybody getting out of this thing and saying, oh, that was such a numb driving experience. But here we go. From first, it's got, wow. Wow, that's really addicting actually. The rev matches are good. And the engine noise getting pumped in actually adds on to the experience. You could tell it's somewhat fake, but it does sound good. It's a really fun car to drive actually. This is really putting a smile on my face, this little GLA45. This is a punchy engine. Let's do it again. It really wakes up. It really wakes up after about 4,000 RPM. Now below that, this engine character is somewhat a little underwhelming when you're driving it slow. I think that's just the four-cylinder nature of it. It feels too, I don't know, this is how I feel about four-cylinder engines in general with the turbos. They feel kind of lawnmower-ish. And you kind of have to drive this thing at speed to really get that feel, that fun factor out of it. But otherwise, I mean, you're just going to drive it around town and it's going to feel somewhat mundane. But that's basically the speed. It's a really fast car. It'll take you by surprise by how fast it is, and it's mainly because of the experience of the sound. It's the exhaust sound, the turbo sound. It really gets pumped into the cabin really nicely. Now, as far as the rest of this thing, the steering, it's good. There's still some, it's not as direct as a sports car, obviously. And then the suspension is still compliant as well. It's not a very rough riding car, but it does feel like an AMG car. It doesn't feel like a regular GLA, which I haven't reviewed on camera, but I have driven off camera. So I would say that this gives you a proper feel of a sports car. Not a sports car, but a sporty SUV, because let's not kid each other. This is an SUV that weighs 3,900 pounds. I could see somebody having a really good time driving this thing on a day-to-day basis with the full accessibility of an SUV, and also putting your foot down and going beyond 4,000 RPM and it putting a smile on your face with all the audible experience that you get from this car. So the rest of it, I have to say, is also very good. The infotainment, the screens in front of you, all of that daily usage stuff is good as well. You've got plenty of space in the boot. Wireless charging is also a very convenient thing. The only weakness about this car is some of the plastic, and that's because this is a $50,000 AMG car. I mean, it's been a very long time since AMG cars are now becoming affordable. Usually AMG cars were close to the $100,000 range, 70, 80,000. When with the entry of some of the more economical range cars, you're able to get an AMG in the $50,000 range, which is great for anybody looking for an AMG. All right, that's enough talk. First gear. It really pops off those shifts really nicely. Whew. It's a really good car. I like this thing a lot, actually. Okay, that's pretty much all I've got to say. If you've got any other questions, please let me know in the comments below or send me a message on Instagram @DriveSteady. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Let me pull over here. Until next time, drive steady.